Hi there. Today I'm going to start building the side beams. The beams that are going to hold the trampoline sideways. And to do that I also need to prepare the holes that will hold the cross beams and the side beams. So that's the two things that I'm planning for this week. I have checked that everything is at the same height. So all the cross beams are 63 centimeters above the ground. And the two hulls are exactly 205 centimeters apart from the middle point of this hull to the middle point of that hull. That means that I should be able to start drilling the holes now. So let's do that. I need to have the exact location of the locking holes before I can start building the side beams. Having measured out the location, I drill pilot holes. I use a long drill to get a constant line through the hole beam and the holders, as it's easy to get offset with a small angle error. But by using a long drill I get a clear line all the way through. Of course I try to keep the drill level and straight. Having all pilot holes in place, I use a 12 mm drill to widen the holes. The final holes will be about 9 mm, holding a 8 mm threaded rod. So I plan on strengthening the side of the holes to reduce the diameter back again. Having prepared the holes, I can start building the side beams. I plan on making an U-beam that should carry at least 100 kilos. The height should be about 8 cm to fit with the cross beams. To fit into cross beams I need to make a joining that is about 5 cm high and about 6 cm apart. Having figured out the limiting measures, I start drawing the profile of the side beams. I plan so I can cut out both profiles from one plank. And I draw how to cut. I use a hand saw to cut the finer details and sink the circular saw into the plank, so I can cut a longer stretch with the machine tool. I cut on freehand by following the line without any support and trim off the leftovers with the hand saw. To cope with the difference in height between the back and front tower, I need to level the support. I trim off the excess on the ends. I will make the legs of the U-beam from 28 x 45 mm roof battens. So I cut these to the same length. I will glue these with wood glue to save some cost. Using clamps and high pressure it will be strong enough. I will remove the excess glue that is pressed out on both sides. Having prepared the first beam I can continue on the other and try the fit on the hull before I glue. Having both beams glued I can try how they might fit. I use the router to round off the edge. This will make it easier to bend glass around the edge, but also make it nicer to touch. At the transformation zone to the straight edge towards the tower, I use a sander to have more control. I screw connector prototypes onto the beam to check that it will fit, or what needs to be trimmed off to also fit with the beam. I cut off the excess until it fits, also with the cross beam. Now I can start gluing. I pre-wet the edges of the drilled holes before I put rolls of glass fiber into the holes. I roll the fiberglass around the pencil to get it into the hole. After an hour I afterfill the glass with some thickened epoxy. Before I will glue the side beams I want to remove some weight. On the lower flange I remove excess on the inside, as this adds very little to the strength, but some to the weight. Of course I need to flatten the transformation zone and round off the edge again. If I had done this before I glued all together, I had saved time. But building a prototype just takes longer because of afterthoughts. On the upper flange I take off material on the outside. This is to soften the transformation zone with the trampoline. It will reduce strength, but the beam is still strong enough. and the glass on the outside of the lower flange will compensate, as the tensile strength of glass is much greater than wood. I polish with the sander after the planer has left some unevenness in the surface. Having the sander set up, I also trim down the excess glass in the holes. Now I start glassing in the actual side beams. I pre-wet the surface before I put down glass and wet this out. Here on the inside there will be very little wear and tear, and the glass that I put here add very little to the strength. Thus I use thin 160 gram per square meter glass, as it also takes a bend better. I use some epoxy to after fill the holes a second time. I continue with glassing in the underside. Here I use 300 gram per square meter, as this is where glass really adds strength. The extra tensile strength from glass compared to wood will prevent the surface to break apart. It also helps with wear and tear from the trampoline attachment. The glass wets out rather easily, but doesn't conform well to the bending surface. Where I have unevenness, I clamp down the glass. After a couple of hours I'm back glassing the next side. This is a side, and here I use 300 gram per square meter, mostly due to wear and tear. There could be some impact violence as well. To somewhat increase the adherence to the rounded edge, I use a roller to press the glass to the surface. After some days of curing, I sand the surface and vacuum off the dust before I head inside to remove the fine dust with a stick cloth, in preparation for painting. To keep the pigment evenly distributed, I stir the paint before I measure up 4 parts of paint and 1 part of hardener. Mix vigorously and thoroughly to make sure that the paint will harden well. I paint the beams, but I should have done something else before. After half a day the paint is not hard, but so viscous that I can turn the beams and continue the painting on this side. I managed to do 3 sides before I had to start putting this episode together. After some curing I tried the beams, but realized I should have done the fitting before I did the painting. In the next episode I will trim the beams and fit them on the catamaran. Please join me then.